Hello and welcome back to another episode of Alt States with myself, Josh Gape, Harry Williams, and our guest today, Warren Williams. Warren, thanks so much for joining us. When we first spoke about doing this podcast, you were one of the first names I had on my list of guests I really wanted to get on, so really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Oh, cool. That's an honor, man. Yeah, I love, discussions, and especially right now, we kind of need, especially in the world right now, we kind of need more information and more discussions on truth. So yeah, it's always an honor.
Okay. And how I thought I'd kick it off was I'd just do a little intro on kind of how we met each other, and then I'll hand over to you to sort of impart your wisdom on the audience. So for everyone who's been listening, I talk about Paul Chek all the time. And Paul Chek is, for those who don't know, he's kind of one of the godfathers of holistic health. And I've done his level 1 and level 2 holistic lifestyle coaching. So they're kind of two of his entry level. Well, level 1's his entry level course, and then the second part of that's the level 2. Level 1's online, and then the level 2 you actually do in person. So, and Warren is the coach for level 2. So we were supposed to do it in, where was it supposed to be, Warren? Lancashire, but it was right at the beginning of the first lockdown. In that, I don't know if people can remember, but it was like a boiling hot week right at the beginning of the lockdown. And it was that week we had the course, and we did it all online. And the course is amazing. I'd recommend it to anyone, and I'll put all the info on it in the show notes for anyone that wants to check it out. But one of the things I found frustrating about it was, Warren, you were kind of like going off on these little tangents, talking a little bit more about your wider backstory and some of the knowledge you had, which kind of sat outside of the criteria for the course. And I was like, damn, I want to know more about this stuff. But then you'd bring it back on, and we'd go back into, the curriculum and all that sort of stuff, which was all amazing. But I was really wanting to dive into kind of, just keep going off on these tangents. So that's what I thought we could do today, was, dive into a few of these things a little bit more. So with that intro, Warren, why don't I hand over to you? And if you can give like a little bit of your background, how you got into holistic health. If I remember correctly, it was quite a young age you sort of got introduced to all of this. And we'll kind of fly through that up until kind of where you are today. And maybe we can go off on some tangents during it, or we'll wait to the end and then dive into some stuff.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'll just say though, HLC 1 is also in person. So I do teach HLC 1 and 2. They do have, as you said, they do have the option of doing HLC 1 online. But you can actually do HLC 1 in person as well. So I do both, HLC 1 and 2. But yeah, so to answer your question, we were kind of talking off air about, Batman film. So that's kind of like my entry, not Batman itself, but my entry into the kind of quote unquote mystical sort of well-being sort of world was actually comics. So from about 6-7 years old, I was really passionate about comics, mainly Marvel, hence the Marvel t-shirt, but, mainly Marvel. And that the interest in that was more about kind of connecting with the kind of cosmic beings. There was something in me that was drawn to understanding more about these beings that were, at a higher level of human consciousness. I was kind of drawn to that, just from like 7 years old, I was really drawn to that. So that kind of actually started my interest in something outside of the normal curriculum that we learn in the Western world. So that's kind of how I got into it. And so a short while after that, I started martial arts. So about 9 years old or so, I started martial arts. And to kind of summarize, I've done 7 styles of martial arts, and I've got multiple black belts. So I've gone through Shotokan karate, which is a traditional form. That was my first style. I did Lao Kung Fu. which is like more of a freestyle, soft martial art, more about speed. Greco-Roman wrestling, which is what they have in the Olympics. Sambo, which is Russian wrestling, which is an offshoot of Mongolian wrestling. Jiu-jitsu, boxing, and judo. So, those are the styles that I've done. And I actually set up my own martial arts system back in the early 2000s. I set up my own martial arts system for about 6 years under this bodyguard company called British Combat Association, and they're serious. They're really serious people. And I got it registered under them, accredited with them, so I could actually, have it insured and covered. And so I ran that for about 7 years. About 6 years. And so it's just an amalgamation, similar to Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, like an amalgamation of multiple martial arts, kind of like in the early days of mixed martial arts in that sense. So that was my kind of physical kind of journey. And during that time, like I said, because I was really interested in this mystical side of things, I started to get into what's called esoteric, which is the greater mysteries. So in the Western world, we have religion, and religion talks about the term, which is really exoteric. And exoteric means the lesser mysteries. So just the simple things that you understand about prayer and silence and being a good person, but not delving deeply into the layers of information that go deep into consciousness. So I started to kind of get into that in a really interesting way. I used to be a rapper. I don't know if you don't know this. I used to be a rapper back in the day. And me and about 20 guys from around the way used to all have groups, and we went to this recording studio to record some music. And there was a guy there who just started talking to us about aliens and UFOs and time and space. And most of the people thought he was absolutely nuts, except me and two friends. Yeah. And we were really interested, even though we thought maybe he shouldn't have started with aliens. Maybe it's a bit too far.
Yeah, it's not laying the trail of breadcrumbs, is it? That's jumping into the deep end.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, someone just needs to teach him how to actually create an entry. But, I was interested in kind of through his insight. I wanted to learn more. So he suggested some material to read. And from that, I managed to bump into, again, there are no accidents, these two masters who were what people call today Sufi. I don't know if you've heard the term Sufi, but in Islam, they have these spiritual sect of Islam called Sufism. And the Sufi are highly spiritual. That is like the spiritual component to Islam. And I studied amongst them for probably about 6 years. And I learned some incredible stuff from them. I mean, whether people want to accept this or not, it doesn't matter. It's my experience. But I witnessed levitation. And I witnessed things such as one of the masters was able to move a cup across the room. Not by pushing it,
Yeah. By picking it up and carrying it over there.
Yeah. Say again?
By picking it up and carrying it over there.
Yeah, people are like, I can do that. And just, we learned some incredible information, like his children were so spiritual. We learned a lot. I mean, his children, like 3-4 years old, they were teaching us things. They were opening portals and doorways, and just we learned some really advanced stuff in this period of time. And then from their education, I was invited to a mystery school, which I won't say the name of because we're not allowed to say it, and I've never said it to anyone publicly. But you can't find it on the internet. You have to be invited. And I went and studied amongst these highly spiritual masters for 10 years, and I traveled to America a lot. So I've been to America like 10 times.
Sorry to stop you. So what age are you at these points? So at what point?
About 11, 12.
Oh, so you entered the mystery school at the age of 11 or 12? Okay, wow. So you were really young at this point.
Yeah. So then I was able to travel when I was about 14 to start traveling across to America. And just go into this kind of environment, this enclosed, it's like 500 acres of land. And they had pyramids, they had like very spiritual structures that they had built on this land. And we would go there and do specific initiation ceremonies and spiritual ceremonies and learn specific techniques of, self-development. So I studied with them for about 10 years. And around that same time, I was kind of starting to get into the Chek stuff. So I was kind of combining the two pieces of information. So I did that for 10 years. And then, like I said, near the end of that, I was really focused on. So at the time, I was doing martial arts as well as doing all the spiritual stuff. So, I was doing that. And then eventually I got into fitness. I became a personal trainer. And when I was working at Fitness Last or Sales First, rather than the name that everybody knows, Fitness First, which I don't call it that, the manager at the time in the club that I was working at, he said, there's this guy called Paul Chek. He's coming to the UK in 2001. He's coming to the UK. Do you want to, jump on? Because me and him kind of had good rapport because he was a yogi.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go. I don't know who he is, but yeah, I'll go. And the manager, he basically got the club to pay for it, to the workshop, Paul's first ever workshop in the UK. And unfortunately, my manager, he left the company and he traveled India just to start learning about Ayurveda and stuff like that. So I just went by myself. And again, this was like 2001. And I sat in the audience, witnessing Paul Chek talking about things. There were chiropractors, doctors, osteopaths, and everybody was just blown away by the information. And at the time, I thought I had gathered enough information to be able to understand a lot, but I realized there were still gaps in my knowledge. So I was like, wow, I want to learn from this guy. And so from 2001, I just obviously started to study everything he's done. And, I've done every single internship, every single course that he's ever done. I studied with him in Australia, in America, in England, and in Denmark. So I've studied, in four different countries with him. And I've obviously, as you know, done Chek Level 4, which is the highest level of his practitioners, or now called IMS 5 or whatever they call it. I can't keep up with the changes. And then HRC Level 3 I did with him as well as doing some private work with him as well. So yeah, that's kind of, my journey.
Well, I got to ask, what was Paul like back when you first met him? Because I've seen some videos, I've done some of his more, the courses on his like back rehab and all that. And he filmed those years ago,
back in the 90s.
Yeah, he's like way big. He looks like almost like a bodybuilder back then. He's like jacked, isn't he?
Yeah,
but was he,
yeah.
I've heard a few people say that because he's quite esoteric now, isn't he? Like a lot of the information he puts out is way more down the realms of sort of say spirituality and stuff like that. But back in the day, I heard he was a lot more talking about physiology and this sort of things. He wasn't so much. So it must have been cool because I guess you've seen him progress as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, as you said, he was definitely 20 pounds. He had 20 pounds more muscle. And I'm sure you're aware of the story when he, had severed one of the cervical vertebrae and then lost 20 pounds of muscle. He's never got it back. So yeah, he was definitely a lot bigger. I think now he's 65 pounds, and then he was 190, almost 190 pounds. And he's 5'7", so you could tell it's quite big.
Small dude.
But yeah, definitely back in the day, he was a lot more yang, a lot more military in his style, a lot more masculine. But since the accident and certain changes, he's, as you've witnessed, far more inclusive, far more relaxed, and far more engaging in that sense. But back then, he almost, not like he had a chip in his shoulder, but he knew that most people thought what he was saying was shit. So he was more aggressive and more direct with how he was teaching, and just kind of putting people in their place, and almost embarrassing people to challenge him, because he knew that he had a lot of people just not knowing who he was yet. He hadn't established himself, so he kind of had to be a bit more forceful with how he taught.
Yeah, where was he getting his info from, like from the get-go? Because you said he was met with quite a lot of resistance out of the gate?
Yeah,
Was it because he was tapped in, or just want to teach him?
He studied in Europe. I can't remember, Vladimir Yonder. He'd studied with a lot of people. He studied with who's the guy that passed? Charles Poliquin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he studied with a lot of people, but he had created his own concepts, and that's the stuff that a lot of people were resisting because it was unproven. And so he had to find ways to, prove his methods by just creating case studies and showing through his effort, because it was so different to the industry. Back then, most people were so outer unit dominant with their exercise, and he was like, no, it's about the inside. And just on that, I remember, because a lot of people thought that the stuff that Paul was doing didn't really have any substance for performance. It was more about rehab, but not rehab that could actually improve an elite athlete. Yeah. So I remember when I did, I brought one of my clients to him, Jay Johnson, who was an Olympic long jumper. And I was using some of his principles, and I managed to get her back because she was medically retired. And I remember Paul said, let's invite you both to America to do a presentation at his Chek conference, because it'll be really good to kind of prove what he's been saying all along, that we can actually use this stuff to improve performance and power. Because back then people still thought, this stuff was fluffy. And so they invited us, and they wanted us to be the keynote speakers at the conference, just because it was that important to him to have an elite athlete prove that this stuff can actually help improve power. And, obviously long jump is a power sport, as opposed to like a marathon or something like that. So that's how much he really wanted support in the proof, by asking other people to demonstrate that we can use athletes to show that this stuff can actually help performance.
It's pretty amazing how he led the charge in that way, because there's a long list of professional athletes he's worked with now, and like people like Danny Way, one of the top skateboarders in the world, goes on his podcast and talks now and again, and his methods are now proven, but like you said, he had decades almost of major resistance that he kind of just kept. It showed so much resilience to just keep going. He knew his stuff worked, and now he's established himself. It must have been really cool to witness.
Yeah, for me, from a business point of view, I always maintain that he's nowhere near where he should be in his career when you look at him versus someone like a Tony Robbins. And when you look at Tony Robbins' net worth is now like $7 billion.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. But Paul Chek, he's not even hit like 20 million. He's not even anywhere near that level yet. But they've both been in the industry for almost the same time. And Tony Robbins was actually a client of Paul's for, I can't remember how long, maybe 3 years or so, but he was one of Paul's clients. Paul's been doing this for 37 years. Tony's been doing it for about 42, 43 years, but the difference in money is tremendous.
Why do you think that is?
Because he's found it hard to be established until more recently.
Yeah. But he's definitely catching steam now. A lot of people have heard about it. And I think his podcast is really helping, him speak on his podcast, and it's the amount of people he can get on there who he's helped. I know Tony Robbins hasn't been on there, but people like that who have seen Paul work firsthand are willing to give him a platform because of it. And then as soon as you hear him speak, the knowledge is undeniable, right? So it's just about him getting in front of people. But I wanted to pull it back on your story a little bit. You mentioned early on about some of the more esoteric but physical things you saw, the levitation and all this sort of stuff. I remember my first experience of hearing about something like this was Izzy and I did a meditation course in the Himalayas for 3 weeks, and our teacher told us about. So we used to have a satsang, like a Q&A every other evening. And the teacher, everyone was asking questions, and I can't remember how it came up, but he started telling stories about these yogis that would go up and live in the hills and stay in caves, and they would leave their handprints in the wall of the cave by just pressing it in. And that was the first time I was like, wow, I couldn't wrap my head around it. It's the first time you hear it, you think, there's no way that can be true. But then since then, I've heard so many people tell similar stories. And what was it like for you actually bearing witness to something like that?
Yeah, the interesting thing is a good question. The interesting thing is that the way we were taught by these two masters was in such a way where they would explain. It's like, like if in order for you to build a plane, you have to understand aerodynamics. You have to understand that before you can build it. So, and just to conceptualize it in your mind, the understanding of it allows you to be able to start to build it out physically. So we were taught that way, where they would teach us concepts in such a way that your mind could create the awareness. And once your mind could create the awareness, then your body can follow the actualization of it. And so there would be certain things they would tell us and explain it in such a way that you just accept it. And because we were so young, it was so much easier to accept it because we hadn't had 30 years of indoctrination. Yeah. So because of that, the concepts allowed us to be able to accept it as normal. Because I still don't talk about certain things because people will think I'm absolutely nuts. Like even Fran, like me and Fran have been together 5 years, and I still have, and I've openly told her I'm not telling you most of the stuff I've witnessed. I've literally told her about 15% of the things that I've witnessed, because even though she's had plant medicines and stuff, I'm like, yeah, but I still can't tell you the certain things you'll just think I'm absolutely crazy. So there are some really cool things like, I've said this anyway, but I'll tell you about this one thing that happened. So one of the two masters, his ability to be, his children's ability to be able to, it's really weird to say this, but his
juicy
daughter,
information
I'm on tenterhooks here, brother. Please.
His daughter, when she was 4 years old, she was able to open portals and pull beings into this world. And we would witness this. She would we'd be walking in a room and she would literally be sat there and she's just opening these vortexes. And fortunately at the time, we were trained to thought we could see stuff. Let me go back a little bit and just give you reason why we could do this. Right. So at the time, when I say we, I'm talking about this group, there's about 20 of us. We would be super disciplined. We would fast every single day, every day. We would pray 8 times a day, every single day. We did not work. You could not work. We were just so deep into this spirituality. We just did nothing. We would just live off our parents and just practice.
Yeah.
So we would meditate. We would meditate twice a day, every single day. We'd pray 8 times a day, every single day. We would fast every single day. And because of that, there was this period of time of, even though I said, there was a 10-year that we went in this esoteric order, there was a 2-year period when I was being taught by these masters. And we had to be severely disciplined with all these practices. So because of that, we were so, the word Ramadan in Islam means the 2 burnings. And it means to burn the physical desire and to connect to the spiritual. So you burn one to get to the other. So the less physical you are, the more spiritual you become. Mm-hmm. So when we were going through this, we were almost neglecting our physical selves and really focused on our spiritual development. So in that, our spiritual senses were really heightened. And so, he would just tell us, look, when you see my daughter, right, she's going to reveal certain things. You're just gonna have to be ready for it, because she was this highly trained, highly spiritual person from a very young age. So yeah, so she would like just open vortexes and pull beings in, and we would, we had some crazy shit happen, man. We would literally see beings in the room, and they would, but not. I want to kind of explain, not in physical form.
Yeah,
like fourth density kind of thing.
They would just personify like what people call an apparition, kind of. But you would see them energetically. And it was weird because they would speak in such a way that you, I think you guys are going to be talking about all this shit today, but they would talk in a language that, well, we couldn't translate it. It was so hard, but she could. It was, I can't even give you an example of how it sounded. It's almost robotic, like distorted robotic sort of language.
Yeah.
And I can't even give you an example of how it sounded, but they would explain stuff to us and we just didn't understand it. And then she would just translate it for us. And the stuff that she was breaking down at her age, like 4 or 5 years old, the way she was breaking down the science of the universe and quantum realities, and she would just be writing stuff down, saying, like, you need to do this, we will do that, you need to do this. And she would just tell us stuff that we needed to do that they were sharing with us. And we would have this happen every couple of weeks. We would go there and visit, and then she would share stuff, and then the masters would guide us on certain things. So there was that. And then, we would, I've probably seen at least 100 UFOs. Like, we would just see them all the time. My nephew, who is 7 years old right now, he's been with me and we've seen together about 5 sets of UFOs. The closest UFO I've ever seen was literally 50 feet away from me in my garden.
And when you say seeing a UFO, you're talking about in the physical. This isn't. And what does that look like?
Well, they're all different, but one of the ones that I saw, it looked like a block of Lego, to be honest, like a brown block of Lego.
Yeah.
Just floating in my garden. And it was funny because I was actually on the phone to Emil Heskett at the time. I was on the phone to him and I just started floating. And I was like, I really need to get off this call so I can take a photograph of this. But I just was staring at it as I was talking to him. But it was 50 feet away. And I remember there was one time when me and my friends, we were walking and it was 2:00 in the morning. And we saw what people see when they see ships, like ones that are far in the distance. And it was just like a moving light.
Uh-huh.
Loads of people see those ones. And I remember we saw it floating across the sky. And when you've seen enough, you can differentiate between ships and satellites and ships and planes.
Yeah.
The patterns that they fly in. And then what they also do is sometimes they just explode. And so we were watching one. It was about 2:00 in the morning. And we were just we were all pointing at it and just talking. But the thing I always talk about with this story was the strangest thing that happened was not the UFO. It was this guy that was on a phone, public phone boxes back in the day. And he was on the phone just, talking on the public phone box. And he heard us. And then he turned around and he said to his call, he goes, oh, hold on for a second. And he put the phone to the side. And then he walked over to us and he looked up and he goes, yeah, I know. And then he just casually got back on the phone. And we were like, wow, that's weird. That was the weirdest thing that ever happened with that particular occasion. And then so we followed it and it was moving. And then it would just boom, explode, like going into hyperspace kind of. And we were all like, yeah, doing all that sort of stuff that you do back in the day when you're like in your teens. And so the stuff like that would happen quite a lot. And for me, I always think that people that don't believe in UFOs, I just don't get it, because if you just look up in the sky, like even for a couple of hours, you'll see them. It's like, how could you not see them? There's so many of them out there all the time.
Even the mainstream narrative is now kind of opening up to UFOs, right? You're seeing like people like Joe Rogan are sharing quite often on their Instagram, news stories where, it'll be on CNN and things like this, fighter pilots, ride along UFOs. There's video footage of this stuff, ships going into the sea. Warren, do you think you've got a greater ability to see these sort of things because of your experience and your training, or is it just because you're accepting of the idea that there are UFOs, you're able to see them more?
Yeah, I think it's both. The power of belief and intention is so strong. It's like, there's this book, E Squared. I don't know if you guys have read E Squared. But this woman talks about the power of the mind in this book, something that Paul recommended. So I got it a few years ago, 8 years ago or so. And she talks about all these experiments that you can do in this book. And you get a quick kind of evidence. It's like about 30 to 50 different tests that you can do in this book. And if you do these tests, you'll have very, very quick evidence of the spirituality and the fact that these things exist. Throughout this book, it shows you just do this test, do that test, and you'll see it. And there was one test that she called the Volkswagen test. And it was just talking about the power of the mind. And she said, just think about a car, any car, and count how many times you see it. And you'll see it more than you ever saw it before, simply because your intention is to think and focus on it. And then you start seeing Volkswagens everywhere. But you didn't notice it before because now your field of awareness has shifted to think about that. You pull it into your reality and you notice it. So it's the same sort of thing with UFOs. If your mind is focused on them, you're pulling them into your field of awareness. And because you're pulling them into your field of awareness, one, you're creating a resonant frequency to where they're at, and two, they can feel it, and then three, they reveal themselves. But to the most of the world that is blocked from it, they will walk right past them. And like when your third eye opens, you'll realize how many of these beings are just floating around constantly, but your field of awareness isn't open, so you don't see it. So yes, it's definitely the intention and the awareness creates the opening, so you see them. And then two is oftentimes they're revealing themselves to you because they are aware that you are open to seeing them. One of my friends who's not been into any of this sort of stuff, and we had a conversation, I don't know, 10 years ago, and him and his uncle were driving a truck down Maidenhead. Maidenhead's one of the places in the UK that most people see UFOs.
Okay.
It's got the highest visual of UFOs is Maidenhead.
We've got a friend getting married there in a couple of months, so
we'll be out with
the binoculars out. Yeah.
I didn't hear that. Say again.
We've got a friend who's getting married in Maidenhead in a couple of months, so we can go and do a UFO spot.
Yeah. Keep your eyes open. Yeah, so he was talking about him and his uncle were driving a truck on the motorway, and this UFO flew over them, and it came down, and it was. He's like, Warren, it was so close they could actually see all the not the propellers, but you could see all the details in it, and they were just shocked. And I don't know how close, it might have been like 100 feet away, but he said they thought they were going to get abducted. It was just coming down closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to the point where oh my gosh, we're getting scared now, because they thought they were getting abducted. And then he said, and there was another time that him and maybe 50 friends were at a barbecue and they all witnessed the UFO, and some of them got their phones out and recorded it and stuff. So it's like there's so many of them out there. What were you going to say, Josh?
Maybe you don't know the answer to this, but why UFOs? We've got a humongous universe. Why are they hanging around the Earth?
Oh, geez, that's I can give you a good answer for that. That opens another can of worms. So, have you heard of Admiral Byrd?
I have, yeah, I have actually.
Yes, I've definitely, yes.
So you've heard about his account of the inner Earth, right?
Yeah.
And Shambhala, and the word Shambhala means centered by Allah. So there's this hollow Earth, and there are tons of advanced civilizations inside the Earth, but the thing that's incredible about this planet is the incredible amount of unlimited energy, which powers crafts. Which is why if you look at the pyramids, if you go online, you'll see that there's pictures of crafts coming out of pyramids and hovering over pyramids, because pyramids have what's called tetrahedron energy, which is a so-called theoretical form of energy that scientists can't validate yet, but a lot of people say exists. And that energy, which is like the energy that powers the DNA, is the same energy that is used to power crafts. So because this planet is abundant in unlimited energy that powers crafts, it's one of the reasons why a lot of UFOs are fighting over this planet.
So it's almost like
because it has unlimited energy.
it's like a gas station for the universe.
Yeah, in that sense, exactly.
Wow.
Oh, good. He's happy with that. Look how happy he's that all the time. Are all
massive
these
electrical grid.
are the crafts that come down? They're not all here with like benevolent sort of. They're not all here for benevolence. There's some of them are bad. They're not all good.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Stephen Greer, he says they're all good. But I don't agree with that because I was taught slightly differently. I do think Stephen Greer, a lot of what he says is really cool. And he's shown a lot of evidence of UFOs. His stuff is on Gaia. You can see it. And he's even got a really good documentary on Amazon where he talks about it. I think it's called The Fifth Kind or something like that.
It's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I think. That's the one. It was out a couple of years ago. You've seen that.
Yeah, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I think.
Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Yeah, it's a really good documentary. So there are wars. There are, like, you guys remember the film V and the series V, which had the reptilians that were masquerading as humans, and they would be in the governments and stuff like that. Well, anyways, there was a series that came out about 30 years ago called V, and then they reproduced it about 12 years ago. So they did like a three season series called V, and what that showed was that there's this race of malevolent beings called the reptilians, and the reptilians are a warring race. So when people talk about the devil, when you read the Bible, they refer to the devil as a snake. Well, it's not a snake, it's a reptile. And it comes from a race of reptilian beings, and these are very aggressive beings. And so all this information about the Greys and how the Greys keep abducting humans.
Yeah.
Well, the Greys are under enslavement from the reptilian race. And the only way the Greys can create freedom is because, the reason why they're under control by the reptilians is they can't produce by themselves. So they keep abducting women so that they can create enough hybrids to reproduce so they can create freedom from the reptilians. So the Greys are agreeable. What they're doing isn't necessarily because they're just taking women and impregnating them, but they're doing it for an agreeable reason in a sense, whereas the reptilians are totally warring.
Is that sort of kind of related? What people say is that's like relatable to the reptilian brain because it's sort of the flight, fuck, or run away, basically, isn't it? And that seems
exactly. That's exactly where they get the concept of the reptilian brain.
The only experience I've ever had with a reptile was I had a pet tortoise, and I think that gave me like an insight into the reptile's mind because all he ever wanted to do was either hump this welly boot or eat some lettuce or sleep. Like there's no love or emotion in those creatures. But then
because even when we talk about the true in mind, this whole concept of how the human mind evolves in terms of awareness, you have the reptilian brain, then you have the mammalian brain, and then you have the neocortical brain. And the neocortical brain is what humans are supposed to be working with, which is compassion, empathy, language, rank, power, authority. Mammalian is a step down, but like a mammal will never eat its young, whereas a reptile will eat its young to survive. And that's the reptile mind. And that's where they get the whole concept from, because it comes from, the reptilian beings that are just all about their own survival. So yes, there are wars happening, intergalactic wars for this planet.
Fascinating. I've got to pull it back to when you were talking about being, on your tenure and when you were studying with the masters and one of the master's daughters was providing this information to you. What sort of information were they, trying to, were they coming through, willingly to provide you with information and obviously maybe you can't tell us exactly what was going on, but kind of what sort of stuff were they telling you?
Yeah, so information because of what's been happening on the planet. So from 1970. So, all right, so intergalactically, obviously we go through the equinox, every 25,920 years, we rotate this galaxy, the solar system, rotates through a central vortex, which takes 25,920 years, which is basically the 12 seats of the zodiac, which is 2,075 years each seat. And we've now come back to the start. So from 1970, we started to move back into the age of Aquarius. So it goes backwards through the zodiac signs. So we got back to the age of Aquarius, which is why when you look at the world from the late 1960s to the early 70s, you had green power and peace and love and all this sort of stuff started to kind of happen. Jimi Hendrix and, all these sort of things where people started to create this level of awareness. Yoga was becoming big. And it's because we were shifting back into the stage of awareness from 1970 until we kind of the planet fully moves back into the age of Aquarius in 2020, which is what has just happened, which is why the whole thing that we won't mention happened in 2020.
Yeah.
So now we're fully in it, and now we're fully in this age of awakening. So to go back to what you're asking, the beings were coming through to awaken humanity and give specific educational insight to help lead the transition of humanity back into this awareness. So we were kind of taught stuff way back, like we knew this was happening way back when. And it was just to kind of prepare us, to give us information so we can do our own self-work, so that we could hopefully be a part of a group of many people that know enough insight that it could start sharing our insight to help the awakenings that happen. Because that there's a lot of people that are supposedly crazy, but when you actually sit down and talk to them, they are deep, beyond deep. They just don't have a way to funnel that energy, that insight. A lot of these so-called crazy people, they just have no guidance. And they imagine you were just getting what people call downloads of information, but no one could explain it to you. Imagine you would see beings floating around the room, but nobody could see them. Imagine you were hearing languages that you couldn't interpret every single day. You'd go crazy.
You almost you're living in a different reality, right? In that state. And so, I'm sure some people will be listening to this and they'll be really resonating with the information, and some people will be finding it really hard to get on board with. Where would you start if you were to say, lay that trail of breadcrumbs like we talked about earlier? How would you start someone out on the journey of starting to wrap their head around all of this?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone really deep, really quickly in this podcast. So we should have probably started with something simpler. But what I'll say is, this journey is not for everyone. There are two sets of beings on the planet in general. When I say beings, I'm talking about humans. You have celestial beings and terrestrial beings. And terrestrial beings are people that this is their first lifetime. And so they can't conceptualize anything except the physical world. No matter what you tell them, this is their reality. That's what they know. And then you have celestial beings that have lived multiple lifetimes. They've been amongst the stars. So when you tell them this information, it makes sense to them. They may not accept all of it, but there's parts of it. And there's something about what you're saying. It feels right. And that's because they've lived other than this place, and they can connect with that information. So if you are the celestial, then yes, some of this stuff will make sense to you. So the easiest way to start, is the simple thing of getting quiet. Like something that Wayne Dyer said is, prayer is you talking to God, meditation is God talking to you. And so most people are just outwardly expressing. And so because of that, they never hear the call of their inner self. We all do it to a degree. We all have deja vu. Every single one of us on the planet has had deja vu at some point. So we know there's something more tangible than the physical world. We think of someone and they call us. It's happened to every one of us. So we know there's something bigger. So if we connect to that reality and start exploring that through introspection and quieting our minds and trusting our gut, as people say, when it's not our gut that we're trusting our innate, soul, our soul information. And every time we trust our gut, as they call it, we're always right. So we know that there's something higher than what we see in the mirror physically. So if we start by quieting our mind and starting to trust our intuition, the more we do that, we actually strengthen the polarity and how fast that information comes to us. The more we accept our intuition, the stronger the intuition comes through to us. And the more we do that, the more we become intuitive. The more we become intuitive, the more we learn to access our consciousness. And the more we're able to access our consciousness through that level of practice, the more that opens up information to you that you'll just know without studying. So I think I might have said to you, Josh, because I always say this, that I don't really read books. I stopped reading books years ago. And I just literally trust information that comes in. And the more I do that, the faster it comes in. Just like training muscles, it becomes facilitated. Information becomes facilitated, just the same as muscles do.
That was power. So we're clipping that, Warren. That was awesome.
Awesome.
The answer you just gave about terrestrial and celestial beings is, I've been searching for that answer for so many years, because there was something I remember when Izzy and I, it was quite a discovered meditation for the first time. It's quite a very synchronistic story how it came about, but I remember just feeling it just resonated with me on such a deep level, and it did so with Izzy as well, and it changed the trajectory of our lives then and there. And then since then, you kind of go through periods where, especially at the beginning, where you discover this stuff, you realize how incredibly powerful and life-changing it is, and you want to tell everyone about it. And some people, and then, since then I've learned it's probably not the best way to go about things. But at the beginning, you got these you're looking at things through rose-tinted glasses, and some people just will pick it up and it resonates with them straight away, and they're like, I want to know more. And then some people, they just no interest whatsoever. It's just like, and I always wondered, why is it that I resonated with this, and why is it that, and some other people, Harry resonated and stuff, and why is it that some people don't? So I've been looking for that answer for ages. So I'm happy that's it was worth doing the podcast just for that one nugget of information. That was awesome.
Perfect information.
So guys, just forward the podcast 45 minutes just to this part.
Warren, sorry, this is like going back probably like, so it seems like when these civilizations, these more ancient civilizations use this sort of unlimited power, you called it, with the pyramids, etc., and that kind of thing, it seems like that those humans would have had a deeper understanding, or completely different understanding of like human consciousness and the way we should treat each other, the way we should treat the world, and appreciating God, etc. At what period did that start altering? Did we start going, because we're on a completely different trajectory now, or at least it seems that way for the mainstream for the most part?
Yeah, so when we were talking about this 25,920 years, the last time it happened where we were in this pristine state of altered consciousness, as people like to say, was 25,920 years ago. When people like, what's his name? Well, there's Rupert Sheldrake, who's a G, Rupert Sheldrake, and I forget the other guy who's his really good friend. But when they talk about the pyramids and the dating of the pyramids, and people saying that the pyramids are only 8,000 years old, is such bullshit. And they're saying that because they don't want to deal with the fact that the planet is older than the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible itself, when they carbon date the oldest information and scrolls of the Bible, it goes back no more than the actual Old Testament, El Torah, as it's properly called, is only 4,500 years old. And what it states in their Bible is that, and they don't count it properly because they don't understand the calculations, because there is actually a calculation in the Bible where it actually tells you that it's 49,000 years, not 4,000 for the era of time of Adam. I'll get to that in a sec. But basically, based on their calculations, they think that the planet was created 6,000 years ago, which is just crap, because all you have to do is to consider one thing: diamonds.
Diamonds, you say?
That's all you have to say.
Okay, interesting. No, sorry, you carry on.
I'll elaborate on that. So basically, diamonds are created through pressure and time. So in order for a diamond to form, it takes 1 million years through pressure and time. The same with crystals. Crystals take 1 million years to form. So the fact that we have crystals and diamonds on this planet, and gold, means the planet is not 6,000 years old. Yeah. Because you wouldn't have those elements in that state. But religious people don't want to deal with that because they have to deal with the fact that religion is fabricated on information that is outdated. So anyway, there are a set of scrolls called the Qumran scrolls, which were found in the cave in Qumran in Russia. And those scrolls just kind of, they're written by the Essenes. The Essenes were the kind of mystical order that Jesus was a part of. And that rips Christianity to pieces. And it shows you the dates are all wrong. And anyway, Graham Hancock, that's the other person I was trying to remember, Graham Hancock. So Graham Hancock, his stuff is deep. So he was proven and shown that the pyramids predate the biblical text statements and scientist statements, and that the pyramids must be at least 25,000 years old. I actually forgot your bloody question. I was talking about the pyramids for a reason. What were you asking me about the pyramids?
Well, we're on the topic of the pyramids, right? It's something that it's never the classic narrative around the pyramids has never made sense to me. If you watch some of those documentaries and they show you the tools that they're saying they built these structures with, and when you talk about the precision of how the stones cut, how far it would have had to be carried, the alignment with the stars, and the list goes on of all these reasons why the standard narrative just doesn't make sense. So I know this is kind of your area of expertise, right, Warren? Kind of ancient Egypt. So do you want to dive into a little bit around like what the real story of like the pyramids is?
Yeah. So Napoleon. When Napoleon went and visited Egypt, obviously, he was trying to figure it out. And one of the things that he had said, and his philosophers and mathematicians and stuff had said, and scientists today say the same thing, that in order to have built the pyramids in the time frame that they were built, they'd need 100,000 soldiers working around the clock non-stop without rest. And even then it would be impossible to build them in the time frame that they were built. So they scientifically cannot equate how the pyramids were built, because a lot of the stones that they used, most of the stones that were used to construct the pyramids were more than 100 miles away. So to have soldiers, and so most of the stones were 20 tons each.
And also like pulling them on a rope, ropes with logs and stuff. Yeah, that's the images,
with
right?
water on the sand, apparently.
Yeah. What's that?
They used to put water. Well, we have a friend of ours who sort of could not be we are at one end of the spectrum. He could not be more further down the other, and he said apparently they did a thing where they put water on the sand and then rolled logs on it, and that's how they pulled these massive stones.
It makes sense.
Obviously, yeah. Obviously, I'm not. Yeah, I don't go on that train of thought.
So they said 100 miles. So basically, the pyramids were created through levitation. And they were created very quickly because they had to be created within the lifetime of the pharaoh. Something really interesting about the pyramids that a lot of people don't. Oh, actually, this other thing as well. A few things really interesting about the pyramids, which proves that they were created using extraterrestrial information, is one, the pyramid of Khufu, the heaviest one of the three. The only place on the planet that can support that weight is exactly where they're built. Nowhere else on the planet can actually support that level of weight, and they are the heaviest structures on the planet. So just to give context to people that are listening to this, the Twin Towers, when they were here, both of them combined weighed 100,000 tons combined. 100,000, and they were really, really high. I don't know how much the Burj Khalifa weighs. I've never looked at that, but it's not going to be much more than 150,000 tons. One pyramid in Egypt weighs 5 million tons.
Wow. And what if they were built anywhere else in the world, the ground just wouldn't be able to support them? Is that right?
Scientists have proven this. It's the only part of the planet thick enough to support that level of weight. So you had to have scientific knowledge that only scientists have figured out now. Back then. Yeah. How? And also the pyramids are on the Tropic of Cancer, which is a 32 to 33 degree axis around the planet, which is an incredibly powerful energetic point on the planet. It's the most powerful energetic point, and all all ley lines and all pyramids are on a 32, 33 degree axis, which is the Tropic of Cancer. The pyramids in Egypt are something that scientists hadn't discovered until 1910, was that the pyramids are not four-sided. People think that they are. They're not. They are eight-sided.
Yeah. I've actually heard someone discuss this in a documentary before, and that was kind of one of the things. It was the nail in the coffin for me, where I was like, "There's no way they could have done that. It's crazy."
Yeah, yeah. And so a lot of scientists don't know why, but yeah. So they're eight-sided, and the first person to discover it was an air pilot who was flying over the pyramids at a certain time of day, and then you're like, "Hold on," and he took a photograph, and then they found that basically every side of the pyramid has an indent, like a dent. It's called an indent into the wall, 1 degree thick. Yeah. The precision to do that is off the scale. It's so tiny and minute that you cannot see in daylight. You can only see it at sunrise and sunset or from a plane. Yeah. Now, if they didn't have technology to fly, how were they seeing that? Yeah. 1 degree, only 1 degree. And what that does, it creates rotational force. That's what a lot of people don't know. So the pyramids, they create energy going up and down, but also rotational. So basically, as you guys probably heard about biogeometry, right? So in biogeometry, they talk about this energy, the BG theory. And BG theory is an energy that is the same energy that runs the universe, the same energy that is generated through prayer, devotion, and a meditative state produces BG3. But BG3, you're using a high energy of gold, like high potency of gold, ultraviolet and infrared light all combined to create this incredibly powerful, potent energy. So the pyramids have this energy that goes up and down, but it also has rotational energy. It's called horizontal negative green and vertical negative green. So horizontal and vertical negative green are incredibly powerful energies that are the same energies that are generated when you meditate and when you pray. And they're very harmonious to the planet. If the pyramids didn't have this indent in it, it would only have horizontal negative green. But because it has the indent, it has vertical negative green as well. So it creates rotational force as well as vertical upwards and downwards force. So it has a harmonious effect. And the pyramids, because of that, are basically helping to balance the planet out. The precision and knowledge of that has to be beyond the humans of today. Well, it is, because people are only figuring it out now. Yeah. So, and then the last thing is that the pyramids of Egypt, they point directly to Orion's belt. They point directly up astrologically to Orion's belt. And Orion's belt, interestingly, right, the word Orion comes from the Greek word Orionos, and Orionos in Greek means heaven. So they point directly to heaven. You would have to have known astrologically thousands of years ago. I'm talking about, tens of thousands of years ago that this was true, because it points directly there. The King's Chamber, you guys probably know this, the King's Chamber points directly to Orion as well, because that's where they wanted the souls to go at the end. But something you might not know is that there are a set of mounds on Mars that are in the exact same alignment as the ones in Egypt, exactly at a 32 to 33 degree axis. And they are built in a shape that is similar to a pyramid on Mars.
They're also pointing to the same part of the solar system. Wow, that's crazy.
There's a film called Mission to Mars with Tim something. He's a famous actor. I forget his name. Tim something. Mission to Mars. It kind of shows it in that film. It's really cool.
Well, that's mad. And I know you sort of said there that the people sort of have only just started to figure it out now. But if you gave this account to like the vast majority of people, they would just say it just literally isn't true. And I think that's probably what we were touching on earlier, is like the idea of terrestrial beings, or like people, you sort of say, also people having cognitive dissonance. They just couldn't fathom it as being real, so they wouldn't accept it, that it's even a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? Even the DNA symbol because obviously, there's no writing in the pyramids, but in all the temples surrounding the pyramids, there are writings. And what's interesting is scientists found, I don't know, years ago, maybe 100 years ago, that there's a symbol, the DNA strand, is actually etched into the walls of one of the temples 9,000 years ago.
So was it an advanced? So it was an advanced human race that had, did they die out for some reason, and then, like, who built the pyramids?
Okay, so I just want to kind of summarize that. So we know Galileo and all these people that the telescopes, microscopes are very, very new within the last 400 or 500 years. That we had the technology to even be able to see DNA. I think it was less than 150 years ago. So these people had the ability to see DNA, more than 9,000 years ago. So it tells you it's a far more advanced race. So going back to your question, so if you read the Bible, and again, the Bible is only a copy of something called the Enuma Elish. And scientists have found these writings in Iraq, and Iraq is modern day. I've forgotten. Iraq is modern day Babylon. Modern day Babylon is Iraq. So they found in Iraq these, and I'm going to ask you a question. They found in Iraq these clay tablets, like in the 1940s and 50s, and they called them. There's loads of them, thousands, and one of the ones that is very popular is called the Enuma Elish, and basically the scientists have called the writing in this. They've called it cuneiform. And cuneus means wedged because it's like little just lines. So it means wedged form. So a form of wedged writing. And scientists have agreed that this is the oldest written language ever. And it predates the Bible by tens of thousands of years. And so the beings that were existing there predate the Bible. And if you were to go back up to the start of the Bible, and here's the answer to your question now, if you go back to the Bible, if you read it properly, when I say you, I mean people, if you read it properly, it talks about Adam and Eve, and then it talks about their son, Enosh. Interestingly, it's in the first, I can't remember exactly where, but it's in the first 6 chapters of Genesis. And it talks about Enosh and how it says, when Enosh was born, now man began to pray. And the transliteration is bodged because that's not what it means. What happened was Enosh means mortal man. He was the first person that was born a human. His ancestors were not humans. Our ancestors had 8 DNA strands. And then what happened was, it's too long to go into, but something happened. And the whole God punishing you and Noah and the flood and all that stuff is related to that. But Enosh was born as the first human being. And it says, and now man began to pray. The word pray is correct in a sense, because what it basically meant was we were stripped of our higher senses. This is after the pyramids. We were stripped of our higher senses, and we could no longer communicate through just intention and awareness and telekinesis and telepathy and all that sort of stuff. We lost those higher abilities, so we became human. That was from the time of Enosh. Everyone since then is like a child. We're not children of Adam, we are children of Enosh because we're human. So yes, we were highly advanced beings, but the reason why we were highly advanced is because you guys have heard of the missing link, right, with scientists and evolution.
Yeah, like the gap in knowledge, right? The gap in knowledge in the evolution of human beings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they say that when we got to Homo erectus, there was a jump, a rapid jump, and they can't explain it. Yeah. That's the missing link. So we should technically still be Homo erectus, because it takes 1 million years for our genome to adapt 0.01%. 1 million years. Yeah. So basically, for us to go from Homo erectus to Homo sapien, which is what we are now, would take 19 million years. So from the time of Adam, it's only been 49,000 years. So we should still be Homo erectus. That's the missing link they don't understand. The reason why it happened is because the extraterrestrial beings, it's a long story, so I'm not going to go into, but basically, extraterrestrials, when they came here, they saw human beings, and this is the whole God created man story, which is crap. That's not how it happened. These extraterrestrial beings came to Earth. They saw the Homo erectus. They created man in their image. If you read the Bible, it does not say God. There is nowhere in the Bible that has the word God. That's a lie. There is no word God in the Bible. In the English translation, there is, but it's translated badly. In the Hebrew, it actually says Elohim. And the word Elohim means those beings. So when you now look at it properly, a group of highly evolved beings came to Earth and cloned man. And when they cloned man, they used their DNA to speed up the evolution to Homo erectus. And then they left them schools of learning called the pyramids. That's how it basically happened. And they didn't go and get whips and chains and pull rocks. They just levitation, move rocks here. There you go. Go and learn.
So, and obviously this is a deep question you might know the answer to, but why? Why would they come here and set human beings on a different trajectory?
That's the part that's long.
That's another episode. That's another episode.
The only way I can say it really quickly is there was a war that happened. These extraterrestrial beings, something happened to their planet. And I know it sounds like I don't know. I do. It's just long. Something happened to their planet. They were looking for gold because they needed gold to repair their ozone layer. And this planet, as we established earlier on, was abundant in gold. And they couldn't mine the gold themselves because the atmosphere was different to their own. And so they had to create a hybrid race that could do the work. And that's what we were. We became workers for them. And after we fulfilled the role, they taught us because they were happy with the work. So because they're benevolent, they wanted to share their knowledge as gratitude. And then we became their children in that sense. And so when in the Bible it says, and just think about this, like, God created man in his own image. So one guy created every single one of us in his image. What did he have? Like 4 different sides of hue. He was white, he was Chinese, he was Indian, he was black. It makes no sense. It was a group of beings that all looked different. And that's why we have diversity. Because it was an amalgamation of multiple beings, not one guy who just had a 4-fold face of different colors.
Oh, this is fascinating.
So, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. When you actually look at the Bible story, there's too many holes in it, but nobody wants to challenge it because it's so unethical to challenge religion.
Warren, I've just glanced at the time. We're at 10 past now. How much longer have you got?
10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Was there anything more you wanted to ask on Egypt? Because I've got kind of a question that I wanted to ask Warren
What about Egypt?
No, more about kind of what's going on in the world at the moment. But if you've got anything more,
Yeah, I reckon let's go into let's go a bit more modern day.
So, Warren, obviously your kind of area of expertise. I know we've talked about a lot of the the Egypt stuff and the origins of the human race, but like what you do today is more, you help people in the real world now and today in terms of like enhancing their, I don't know, how would you call it, their health, their vitality, how they conduct themselves in the world. And obviously the last 2 years have been pretty tough for everyone. There's been a more tough for some than others. And then, with everything that's going on right now in the world, there's another big sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, another conflict, negativity, which is kind of feeding into. And from my experience interacting with people, a lot of people feel, fear, and they also feel a little bit helpless, right? But with your understanding of how energy works, how the collective consciousness works, I feel like you'd be a really good person to speak on how people can actually take some sovereignty, how they, with what they're doing with their everyday life, to help bring the collective consciousness out of a state of fear and into more of a state of vitality and love. So do you feel you able to speak on that?
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah. Okay, I can touch on that. So one of the things I've been sharing is that, what a lot of people are saying is what we're going through right now is a global purge. And this awakening. So, the planet's been broken, the systems have been broken, and the only way to fix it is to totally break it down. And so all of this whole great resignation that's happening on the planet right now has had to happen because, the way that humanity is living is unsustainable. So whether it was this thing that we're not going to mention, or something else, something was always going to happen around now because of the era of time that we're in, to force a massive shift in the way people perceive authority. So even astrologically right now, certain things are happening on the planet astrologically, and what it shows is when certain Jupiter, Mars, and the Sun moving together into a specific alignment, April the 30th of this year opens up a specific seat of power where it opens a level of awareness for humanity where they've been so annoyed at the leaders of the planet, and they've witnessed enough, whether they were open spiritually or they've had to because of pain. It's forced everybody to witness their own truth and to have the realization that the way they view the world no longer works. So we've had people, we have three types of people. And I heard this, Leonardo da Vinci actually said this, and it's so apt for today. You have three different sets of people when it comes to perception. Those who see, I almost forgot it. So you have those who see when they are shown, and those who do not see. So obviously for us types, we're those who see something, it makes sense. Those who see when they are shown, these are some of the people that in the last 2 years have had loved ones die, or they've not been able to see them. And, they took something that made them feel not too good. And so they have had an awakening through pains, like now they see. So it's those who see when they are shown. And what they've been shown is what they're seeing on the news. This does not make sense. Something doesn't make sense. I normally believe, but there's something that's not adding up. And so now they've awakened. So those two will separate from the others who will not see. These are the people that will get taken up by a UFO, slapped in the face, come back down to Earth, and the news will say, UFOs don't exist. And they'll say, okay. They will not see. So this last 2 years has forced this awakening to rise humanity. So basically, I'll try and say it in this really simplistic way for the listeners, so that because it can get really advanced, I want to make it really simple. The universe resonates on this state of awareness called 5D, or five-dimensional consciousness. And it sounds really, really deep. It just means people that are really open to everything that is true from outside of themselves. This planet is the only planet in our galaxy that is resonating or still held at three-dimensional thinking. So three-dimensional thinking for the listeners just means everybody that's stuck in the matrix. If you're stuck in the matrix, you're in 3D thinking. 4D is those who are starting to see. There's a difference. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something more. Okay, now you're at 4D. And 5D, I've done plant medicines, I'm into meditation and all that sort of stuff. So we know that there's a minority of people on the planet that are truly awoken. And then you've got the ones that are woke. The woke ones are at 4D. They think they know their shit and they don't. They're just at 4D. And then you got the ones that are closed-minded. And so because of that, because most of the people on the planet are anchored in belief and fear and doubt and all that sort of stuff, they are holding this planet at 3D. And because they're holding this planet at 3D, it means the solar system can't evolve to 5D to join the rest of the universe. And so we're anchoring it to a level of vibration that it shouldn't be at. We're too physical. And so this time of this calamitous time right now is forcing this awakening so that everybody can rise to 5D. And once everybody rises to 5D, that's when we now take this planet back to this higher stage of consciousness, which is something that Ken Wilber spoke about, the integral stage of consciousness. And he says that if we can get a minimum of 4 to 6% of the people on the planet at the integral stage of consciousness, that will create a global shift in consciousness where everyone will start to accept the truth regardless. When that sort of thing happens, everybody moves this planet up to the stage that it should be in line with the universe. And there will be no more racism, no more sexism, no more isms in any way. Everybody will be balanced. And that's basically what we're waiting for. So this whole global purge is to force that awakening, that awareness, to shift everybody back to this 5-dimensional level in line with the universe.
And is it that's an amazing answer. And for anyone who's listening, who's like, I'm up for speeding this boat along here. What's something someone can do on an individual level to help themselves awaken?
I mean, something, the popular thing right now is obviously plant medicine, which I know you guys know well. I'd be a bit reserved on everybody jumping on the plant medicine bandwagon, because if you haven't done self-work, what gets mirrored back to you in the plant medicine is the lack of work you've done within yourself. And then you create what's called a lesser conjunction. A lesser conjunction is when you only know God when you're on the medicine. But as soon as you leave the medicine, you don't know it, and you have the same level of awareness you had before. So you get addicted to wanting to go back. Mm-hmm. And then you just got addicted people that have found a healthy addiction called plant medicine rather than weed, or even though the weed's a plant, but like something else. So I would say, stuff that you guys know, start eating well, take supplements, clear the toxins out of your body, because your body is an antenna. And the more toxic the body is, the less you're able to receive the information that your higher self is trying to get to you. Because right now, our bodies are always broadcasting information to us, but most of us are so maimed and shut down that we actually can't hear our own programming. So the word transcend, people think transcending means to go somewhere, and it doesn't. Transcend literally means to witness the rest of yourself. And most people don't, because they hide it in shadows. So the real step is, first of all, the stuff that you guys know, just clean your body out. Start getting ape nutrition.
That's what I was waiting for.
But it's true, like supplements, like if you, and you guys know this, like if it's hard for you to change your diet, get supplements. And then once you start to feel better from that, you'll want to eat better as well. Exercise, go into breath work, because breath work is a gentler transition into awakening your consciousness to move into plant medicines. If that stuff's too spiritual, get a journal and write down your thoughts every single day. And what you'll be aware of is that you're moving from unconscious programming to conscious awareness. And just by writing, you might say, but I'm depressed about what I'm writing. At least it's not hidden anymore. And now you can start facing and dealing with it. I would say don't go to, I don't truly believe in counselors. I don't think counseling helps. What counseling does, and I've spoken to many people that have had it, is it brings it up, but without any way of dissipating it. So do things that allow you to transmute that energy, such as ecstatic dance, scream therapy, plant medicine, breath work, Tai Chi, Qigong, grounding, cold showers, all these sort of things that can move the energy that's caught at a cellular level out of the physical body, because you move it out of the body, your mind's clearer. So those are the sort of things that people can do to kind of get what they want, which is witnessing the rest of themselves.
That is amazing answer. And I think an awesome point to end the podcast on. Warren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thanks so much, brother.
That was an honor, man.
If anyone wants to find you, do you want to just say a little bit about what you do and where people can find you?
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity. So WarrenWilliamsCoaching.com is the website. Warren Coaching is the Instagram. And I'm on Instagram more than I am on Facebook. I've also got LinkedIn, but I'm not really on it that much. And then I'm doing a retreat, my first retreat, which is going to be in Bedfordshire in June. It's going to be a 2-day immersion for kind of help people to fast track their own awareness, because we're going to go through breath work as well as some deep insights into spirituality, art therapy and stuff like that. So I'll be running that, as well as I run groups. So I run something called Evolution, which is a group training program, which helps, because again, unified mind, groups of people together having the same thoughts, that helps people to learn about themselves, building core values, and learning enough about business to set up their own businesses. And then I also do my private kind of coaching, which is total self-mastery, for people to kind of invest in a year of my experience to help them to grow in any way that they need to, whether it's physically, emotionally, structurally, or anything like that.
Okay, amazing. And if anyone wants to find out about those, so that's all on your website.
That's all on the website.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. Harry,
Unbelievable.
Do you want to do your plug?
Yeah, just Harry.Williams91 Instagram. If you fancy, give us a follow.
Mine's ape_nutrition on Instagram. If you've got any questions for me, DM me there. Website's apenutrition.co.uk. We've got a discount code for listeners, AS10. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. That was awesome.
Cheers. Thanks, Warren, mate. That was great.
Cool, guys.
Thank you.